Car dealers are starting to panic. Their vehicles aren't selling on the used car market. We walk down the lots and we see cars, trucks, SUVs, and they're not selling. What are these dealers actually doing now to unload these vehicles? They are starting to panic. We walk down some of these car lots, take a look. Medium-sized truck and a whole plethora of trucks as you walk down this lot, filling up the lots, and they just can't sell these vehicles. They can't sell the SUVs, they can't sell the pickup trucks. People having to give back their nice shiny new Mercedes. And I truly do feel that what we're seeing in the market are truck sales, SUV sales, car sales, it's dropping off. And part of it is a problem related to price. Customers are mad. And here's a whole pile of vehicles that have just come back from people that were trying to unload them, get rid of them, trade them in, and just move on to the next. But the dealers can't sell them now and their lots are filling up fast. And right here we have a whole row of vehicles. These are examples of vehicles that people bought back at the peak when we saw prices at their all-time highs. Interest rates start to spike up and we saw people that were paying way over sticker because they did not want to wait. There was this alleged shortage on chips and materials and vehicles, and people were often paying a lot more than MSRP. Now, the only way to keep things affordable on the purchasing front is to buy something like this Ram that has about 300,000 kilometers. Look at it. It's all rusted out. You have to buy a truck that's all rusted and it's ready to fall apart. On a lot of vehicles, it didn't matter if you were talking trucks, cars, SUVs, people were paying more, way more than they should have. Now we're clearly seeing the market starting to crash. We've seen new car sales go down year over year. Now we're seeing new car sales drop like a rock. We're seeing new trucks not selling because they're high prices. We're also seeing SUVs not selling and they're dropping like a rock with aggressive incentives. And overpriced brand new vehicles aren't selling very fast either because they're just that. Overpriced. Ram 3500 limited crew cab night edition vehicle here, but the price $121,000, as you can see right there. But the problem is where dealers lack the sales on the new car front, even with all the big incentives, 0%, 1.5%, 2.9%, some big incentives, discounts, $2,500, $4,500, $7,500 off. We've even seen $12,500 and now even with some big incentives that we're seeing all over the place. We look here, save over $18,500 on Ram 1500 models and basically payments from $129 weekly isn't enough to get enough people to buy on the retail market. So what do people start to do? They start to look for cheaper vehicle. I don't understand the words you just said. And the dealers believe they've got that covered too. So now they hike up the prices of their used vehicles and that turns people off from those vehicles too, and they stop buying the used vehicles. So now car dealers are snookered. They're in a position where they can't sell new or used, not at the rate that they need to keep the lights on and the tiles clean, as well as a free concierge service and the coffee that while you wait in your service department. So there's a huge amount of damage control at the car dealers now because they're now sending a lot of these vehicles to auction just to try to unload them. They're not selling on the dealers' lots. People don't have the money. They're stretched so thin. People are living in tents and under bridges. And now it's bad enough that dealers keep cranking prices or hold the prices sturdy. People just want a simple, cheap mode of transportation. And as a result, what we're seeing is a lot of these vehicles getting sent directly to the dealer auction houses just to try to unload them there, where they go transfer from one dealer to the next dealer, trying to capitalize on a sale somewhere, but people aren't buying them. Now, according to the Manheim Used Vehicle Index, we've seen wholesale vehicle price drops over 14% year over year from this time to the same time last year. Clearly an indication that dealers are suffering and they're not selling the vehicles at the rate that they need to keep the lights on. But on that note, the average daily sales conversion rates dropped to about 59.6%, which is pretty typical for this time of year. After tax time, we're seeing a lot of people finally take a step back. They don't have quite as much money, and even the cheaper vehicles aren't selling like they typically would. It's another great piece by Ford right there. As you can see, yeah, they've got the great little grille there, and obviously it's a small diminutive little unit right there. Beautiful little headlights, very simple to change out, which is good, but this looks like a baby Escape, just a little bit smaller. Yeah, you have basic lights. Yeah, you have some great wheels on there and the typical fold-away mirrors. Look, single access, one touch in. Of course, you get the great little roof racks on top. Some of these results aren't necessarily unexpected, but the overall market is still on the decline. And for comparison, over the last 3 years, April of every single year, we've seen an average about 60.4% conversion rate versus this year's being 59.6. Clearly things are on the slide. And I love it. That's a clear indication that things are moving more to the trajectory of the buyer rather than the sellers. And while the prices aren't back or corrected yet where they expected to be, or a lot of consumers hope they'll be, they're definitely trending in the right direction, which is what we all want to see. But why don't we just break this down a little bit so you understand which cars lost the most and which cars held the strongest on the wholesale market. Now remember, the wholesale market's a little different than retail because these are different drivers. And we know that a lot of dealers and OEMs are looking to sell higher profit margin vehicles. Top trim luxury vehicles, pickup trucks, full-size SUVs traditionally are harder sellers, or they have been in the last little while because people don't have the money. But the flip side is every transaction results in much more dollars in the dealer's hands, whereas a small little subcompact car on the used car market, flipping it at an auction just doesn't make the money for a dealer. High probability of repairs, breakdowns, water pump issues, timing chain, bad gearboxes, and just high costs of servicing. Remember, this is basically a BMW with another skin. Let's take a quick look. So to flip a $1,500 car and make $180 on it just doesn't make a lot of time and sense. Another example right here where you got, smashed hubcaps, missing altogether over there. You burn more of that on administrative costs at the dealer level. And so that's why we're seeing what we're seeing on the wholesale market at the auction house level. Other things that are going on right now. We're looking at this BMW. This is actually a 2012 model year, as you can see right there. 2012, it's an X-Drive. Obviously this one has the 50i, so that means it's got the V8 engine. And the tires are getting down there. Clearly it's not worn out, but they're probably about 60%. There's some marks and dings and things all over this car. This car is actually 11 years old, soon to turn the clock here at 12 years of age. And there's a time when they wouldn't even consider putting a 10-year-old vehicle on the car lot, on the used car lot. No, they wouldn't. This car would easily make it to the wholesaler and would go the route of the auction and let the smaller corner car lots pick those up. Year over year in the luxury car segment, we've seen about 12.9% decline in sales on the luxury car segment. In other words, you want to look at a BMW or an Audi or a Range Rover. On the used cars, as they roll through, remember, higher margins. The dealers like to get a quality late model used luxury vehicle as they're kind of hard to come by. The prices are a little tighter. They lost a little bit less money there because every dealer likes to have a few of those nice luxury vehicles with low mileage, well looked after, with no accident history, have one of those sitting on their lot. This is a large 7 Series vehicle, as you can see with the kidney grills up front. This is a large estate vehicle. Obviously large, basic looking wheels. Here's an X-Drive, means you get all-wheel drive with this. You do get oversized sunroof and all the technology buried in there because this is the large estate vehicle. As I already said, you do get LED tail lights. Of course, this is an upgrade. The 750i is the car by BMW that we're talking about. And yes, it has some nice details like chrome handles. You also get this nice brushed chrome along the window line. It's a gorgeous vehicle. And as well, it should be a no surprise, the EV market. Oh yeah, that's a face ripper, man. That thing fucking hauls. Saw about a 17.5% decline year over year from April of last year to April of this year. Clearly an indicator because they know each EV on a used car market, on the car lots, are a huge risk. They're a huge risk for car dealers to have those sitting around. They've got to keep them charged. People aren't looking for a lot of electrical vehicles, and they're just a very tough vehicle to sell. As a result, a lot of the prices are falling a lot sharper in the electric vehicle segments, particularly in the Tesla space, the Lightnings, the Audi e-tron GTs. Those are selling very poorly. EQS, EQE by Mercedes, they're just not selling. So they took a big hit, and electric vehicles do represent a stronger value on the used car market for a person actually looking for those, but in the wholesale market, they took a much sharper decline. So SUVs and CUVs, that's compact utility vehicles, took a pretty sharp dump in 14.6% a sales decline year over year from last year, April, to this year. So clearly SUVs, particularly on the larger end of that spectrum, are vehicles that weren't selling. I mean, nobody wants them. They were too much money, and we're starting to see that show up, replicate, or reflect in both the retail market as well as the wholesale market. The smaller vehicles and the mid-size SUVs were a little better. The full-size vehicles took a much sharper dump. One thing that's interesting is mid-size cars lost about 16.8% over the last year, and even really more interesting, and this speaks to why I said what I said, 17.6% decline in the sales of small cars, compact cars. So if you're bringing a small, cheap, compact car to the auction at the wholesale level, dealers were less inclined to pick those up. They don't want to have a clapped out little Elantra or a clapped out little Toyota Corolla. So you look at this beautiful little Toyota right here, right? You think this is a great car. Probably can't get in too many accidents. It's a pretty slow car, but if you look at the paint right here, you'll notice there's a shine. It's a very distinctive shine, and even up here. And they have paint protection film here. You can see the line. You could even feel it, and you feel the edge here, and you also feel the edge here, and you feel the paint protection film on this panel. But there's no film on here. I can't feel a lip there. I don't feel a lip on here, and this is the bumper. But if you look at the bumper, is actually more hazy, and it clearly doesn't match up with the body panel over here. So it's a different color. It's actually a different texture altogether. So this here clearly has been repainted, while this looks more factory. Clearly a bit of an accident history going on there, and sad state of affairs, it's well hidden. And while some people, buyers like you and I, love having those cars because they're cheap and easy to own, the dealers don't like to sell them. So they're not buying them on the wholesale market, and that's why they're sitting. And that's also why they're going for a bigger, sharper decline. But what's interesting are pickup trucks. But we know, and I've said this, pickup trucks are increasingly more and more expensive, both on the new market. And here's another great example, a 3500 HD Cummins turbo diesel, but this is basically a tradesman right here. This is nothing more than the most basic of basic 1-ton diesel pickup trucks. Yes, you do get 4x4, and you do get the standard size box here. You got nice chrome. You notice plastic, of course, very basic, but this tradesman crew 4x4 is going for $89,000, 89 grand right there, as well as a used market. Used market, if the dealers can get their hands on a 2 or 3 old pickup truck with 40 or 60, 50,000 miles on it, that's a prime time to be in. And they know huge margin, expensive vehicles, big percentages, big profits with pickup trucks. And that's why they didn't fall quite as much as some of their peer vehicle types. And trucks only lost about 15% year over year on the wholesale market, clearly reflecting that a lot of dealers like to get their hands on those vehicles to flip them on the retail side to sell to people like you and I. So because of all these declines in the value of used vehicles, the fact that new vehicles aren't selling, dealers are getting nervous, they're panicking, and they're dumping their vehicles at the auction. That's why there's an increasing inventory at the auction these days, but the values of those vehicles transacting are going down and down and down, further and further, month over month, to the point where now year over year we're seeing a big decline on average of 14%. Now with some surges in the market, we've seen year over year increases in the last little bit. However, this last month of April, we've actually seen a 4% decline in retail sales. Clearly an indication recently that people are holding back and retaining the fact that they need a little more money in their hands just to eat and sleep. But the median consumer expectation for inflation jumped to 3.2%, the highest number for the last few months, showing that people are still buying daily goods. Housing is going more expensive, vehicles are getting more expensive, and inflation is staying high. Well, with high inflation rates comes high interest rates, further hampering the fact that people don't have the money to buy those new or used vehicles because it's directly tied to lending rates, which people can't tolerate. So the bottom line, the consumer's view of buying conditions have literally deteriorated, with interest rates holding steady, inflation slightly climbing, and the fact that used car prices are holding steady, and as well, dealers are panicking. They can't sell their vehicles, they're flipping it. It's a stalemated marketplace. New vehicles, although there's some big incentives we're starting to see, it's not enough. People are asking for 50% off, 40, 50, 60% off of these new trucks, cars, and SUVs, but instead, they're getting 5% off, 7% off. It's not enough to get the market stimulated. And while there are people out there buying, that's a small sliver of the population, and most people are just resisting the urge to buy a new car. So as a result, a lack of this movement has literally driven the dealers into panic mode to where they're now having to take their cars, trucks, SUVs, dump them at the local auctions, and hope for the best. And with all of that said, let's talk more about the affordability crisis and how now car prices are out of reach by your average consumer. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.